To summarise then, we can conclude that Tanks' gun was taken from him before 9:44 PM. Him and Creek were shot with it. Their attacker, out of ammunition, took up a sword and stabbed Miller in the throat, before slicing into Trey's neck. This individual then proceeded to posthumously crush Trey's skull by striking it so hard they shattered a baseball bat, as Creek bled to death on the other side of the room. Finally, when Officer Chopin entered the scene, they stabbed him in the back, before finally being apprehended by Officer Rogers. That's all correct as far as we understand it. So now Rockford's put together a timeline. It's probably helpful for the jury, putting it all in chronological order. But have we actually learned anything new about the culprit's actions? We have. Emma brought her on the stand to establish the culprits. Starting time. Not the methodology or position, it's the time. She wanted to establish the starting time of all the murders. Wasn't that pretty obvious from just one autopsy? Tanks died first, as his mod confirmed. Well, yes, but the fact that Tanks and Creek died first, combined with where their shooter stood, tells us in what part of the room the culprit must have started... Oh, so it is their position. Bugger. What part of the room the culprit must have started their killing spree. Correct, because Creek and Tanks died first and they were both shot from within 1 to 2 meters. We know that the culprit must have started taking action right by the desk, and not by the door to the holding room. Indeed. So the likelihood my client broke out from there is not very high at all. Check. Yes? An abundance of DNA evidence establishes the defendant was indeed held in the other room, but clearly he didn't remain there. His captors must have taken him out to question him in the main room, and dragged him in front of the desk where Tanks' gun would be within reach. You're the one who's reaching. You have evidence to the contrary? A better explanation for how he got out of where he was being held? Can't exactly propose that the real killer set him free as a scapegoat. The forensics are clear. My client was gagged and bound in that room. Was, but clearly they had to cut him loose to question him. Ah! They could not have moved him because he was hooked up to the thing stopping his mods from reactivating. If they took him into that other room to question him for more than a couple of minutes, his mods would have been able to reactivate. A mistake that ended up costing them their lives. Do you think that's true, Sasuke? I'm not positive, of course, but my body is telling me I was held in that room from the time I woke up until I got myself free. Emma's theory about the Blue Bloods being dumb enough to let Sasuke near a gun isn't perfect, but it's still a theory. I don't have jack shit to counter that because not even Sasuke knows how I let him out. If the defense has no objections, then they'll have to take this L and meekly move on to their cross-examination. Adone, that made you sound very feeble. You've developed a habit of only using we when I'm winning. Fix it. That made us sound very feeble? Why do I have to get roped in? Emma's already established a timeline and an order of events. I could pick at the details, but she's close enough to the truth already. I know the truth firsthand about every death except Chopin. In his case, Emma and I are on even footing. So what's my advantage? What do I know that everyone else is mistaken about? The murder weapons. She knows that there was an extra knife, and the fact that the knife is missing means there was an extra person there. But how the hell does she suggest it when the katana is... The katana was definitively used for at least one killing. So it's not like illogical to think it might have been used for a second and then a third. It's got to be the murder weapon because like these two are ironclad pretty much. Right, the murder weapons. Everyone thinks Miller was stabbed in the neck by the katana. I'm the only one who knows my knife was there. There's got to be a way I can use that information to my advantage here without revealing that I have it or how I got it. I'm walking a razor's edge here. At least it's thematically appropriate. The defense is ready to begin our cross-examination, Your Honor. Okay, is this the blackjack? I'm not historically very good at this. Dr. Sato, you were asked to examine all 5 bodies. Did you visit the crime scene? I did not. Have not. Photos and other ARC data were provided to me to aid in my examination. Surely the defense isn't objecting to a little virtual work? Of course not. After all, had anything been added or removed from the crime scenes, ARCs would show it. There's no fooling it once it's been set up. I mean, it's the blade wounds, but I don't know where to go with this. Victims Trey and Miller were both attacked with a blade. Exactly how fast did they die? Trey had his throat slashed and blood found on his hands suggests he had time to reach up to his neck in response. But he would have quickly stumbled back and collapsed onto the floor dead. Miller wouldn't have lost much blood at the moment his neck was punctured. For that kind of wound, the weapon acted as a stopper. But once that stopper was removed, he would have lost consciousness in mere seconds. And while the blade was still in his neck, if it was there for more than a second, he too would have reflectively reached up, presumably to try and grab the blade. Is there proof he grabbed the blade? Also, I like her eyebrow. Wiggly, wiggly. There won't be proof he grabbed the blade because surely that would cause cuts on his hands or like fingerprints of blood on the blade. So I'm going to press. Is there any evidence he grabbed the razor-sharp katana lodged into his neck? He had his own blood on his right hand, but there were no cuts on it. Because he grabbed the knife's handle, not a sword's edge. So it stands to reason the blade was withdrawn very quickly. By the time his hands reached up to his neck, it must have been gone. One of many small inconsistencies with this katana theory I can shine a light on. Will that be enough? Let's have a look at this. Could you speak a bit more about the manner of Officer Chopin's death? Well, to reiterate, his body was found with a katana stuck through his back. It had punctured his heart, killing him. There was massive blood loss at the scene. At least in part because the wound in question was agitated, I suppose I'd say. I mean, I know what agitated means, but, you know, there's the whole never ask a question you don't know the answer to. I just don't know how the answer would help me. It's just, yeah, it doesn't point to anything. I don't know what I'm grasping at here. Stay. Alright, let's hear the gunshot wounds. 2 individuals suffered gunshot wounds. You found that both matched the Mag-US firearm that's been entered into evidence? I did. Shrapnel is by nature unpredictable, but the scale of destruction does make it pretty hard to mistake for anything else. Didn't exactly learn anything new there. No, I'm going to have to try this one. Stabbing Miller's neck so precisely and so fast, that must have been quite the feat of swordsmanship. Stating a conclusion, Your Honour. Comments withdrawn, quick as a blade. Have you ever seen a stab wound like the one that killed Miller inflicted by a long blade? And wielded in one hand by a man experiencing heavy blood loss? No, can't say that I have. Now whether that manoeuvre is impressive or improbable, well, I'm a doctor, not a fencer. And Sasuke doesn't own a rapier. Yes, it does. Oh, I don't know what to do. It does. Because they're both... Like, the only difference is for Chopin's stabbing, we don't have a length, but it doesn't matter. Like, the katana is longer than 13 centimeters, so drawing attention to the fact that Miller was stabbed by a 13 centimeter blade, which is actually bloody long. Is that seriously how long it was? Puncture wound is 13 centimeters deep. Sorry, Morgan was carrying a foot-long bloody dagger. That's a really long dagger. That's like a short sword, almost. I assumed, like, her dagger would be like, I don't know, 4 to 5 inches? I'm an idiot, sorry. I was reading it as 13 inches. Yeah, alright, 13 centimeters is about 5 inches. That is on... Sorry, complete just off. Okay. Yeah. I think that is important then, because if the puncture wound is only 13 centimeters deep, it didn't go all the way through. So that means someone had to stab partially and then withdraw. That seems incredibly unlikely. What can I do with that? Does the katana fit the puncture wound? Did you find that the stab wound on Miller's neck fit the sword that the police recovered? Approximately. That doesn't sound conclusive. The entry wound is slightly smaller than I would expect for such a precise stab. The sword hand must have barely trembled, but it's within tolerable ranges. Furthermore, DNA on the tip of the sword is a match for Miller. Damn it, just because I happened to drag it across where his blood had dripped. And of course, there isn't any other implement to the scene that fits the wound better? No, of course there isn't. Miller stabbed? I still think it's like she should have mentioned how... No, because she said it was removed straight away, so like a quick in and out could theoretically not have gone all the way through. Like it didn't have to go through bone or anything, so it didn't need the force of it. And might be consistent with a one-handed stab, but still seems very unlikely. Stabbing Miller's neck so precisely and so fast, that would be quite the feat of swordsmanship. Stating a conclusion... Oh. Okay, no, I'm just going around in circles here. It's got to be Chopin's cause of death then. That's the only other thing that draws attention to the sword. What does agitated mean? What do you mean by agitated? Honestly, as though after impalement the blade was moved around inside the wound. As if it had become stuck and someone was struggling to remove it. How is that 21? London mentioned that Sato found the wound odd, but to hear her specifically say the blade had become stuck. That's interesting. Thank you, Dr. Sato. I think I can speak for all of us when I say that I found that very enlightening. I don't know how that's blackjack. Like, I feel I knew all the pieces there, but I don't know why that conclusion is blackjack. Dr. Sato, you just testified that Officer Chopin was impaled from behind. Did this occur on the spot where his body was found? Yes, it did. The body shows no signs of being moved, apart from those big smears of blood all the way from the door to where he was. I'm curious then. What was there for the sword to get stuck in? When he fell over. Well, if Chopin was in the centre of the room, standing upright, Oh! Is this saying, how could somebody simultaneously stab in quick and withdraw quick enough to pierce only 13 centimetres into the neck, but is not stabbing in and out quick enough when it's going through the torso? You know, one is a much smaller, tighter target than the other. I mean, it wouldn't have got caught on the air, right? Bone, perhaps? Surely you examined the wound inside and out. Did you see any marks on his ribcage where the blade had caught? No, I didn't. Then it stands to reason that the blade didn't get caught on anything inside Mr. Chopin. It got caught on the floor. Pardon? You need to take greater advantage of the arcs, Councillor Morgan. Learn to flip things on their head. This is Morgan playing her, right? Like, she knew that was the answer, and she's leading Emma into saying he left the sword in. Learn to flip things on their head. Entire rooms, if need be. If you had, you'd see there's a clear indentation in the floor that lines up perfectly with Mr. Chopin's wound. how did you think the tip of the sword got chipped? You're saying the sword got stuck in the floor. That's where the facts are saying. Do you disagree? No, not at all. It could have got stuck in the floor. I don't necessarily disagree, no. If Chopin was impaled, then fell face first, it makes perfect sense for the sword to get stuck in the floor as he collapsed on top of it. So we conclude that after being impaled, Chopin fell over with the sword still in his torso, driving the sword into the ground. Then his attacker aggravated the wound by trying to retrieve the sword from his corpse. Does that sound right? What? Huh? Oh, are you asking me? Sort of. Asking the room, I guess. Well, I believe I can answer. Yeah, she was playing Emma there. What you're describing makes sense, Dr. Sato, but only until we consider again the fingerprints on the sword handle. If my client really did impale Tariq Chopin and get his sword stuck doing so, why would he try to retrieve it with only one hand? Because he had to retrieve it with one hand. You yourself already elucidated that the defendant's left hand was broken when he destroyed the elevator panel in Crane Tower. His left hand was too damaged for him to even grip a sword? That doesn't square with this piece of evidence. The precision of the swords of the strike. Also, I like how these are a different style of card. Like, I don't know if that's an update because, you know, they keep making new episodes, or whether it's specifically for this trial, but I like it. His left hand was too damaged for him to even grip a sword, so that's got to be about the left-handed prints on the gun. If he can't even grip a sword, how can he pull a trigger? All in. The Mag-US? How can my client's left hand be too damaged to grip his sword, and yet also capable of gripping the Mag-US? That oddity is hardly impossible to explain. We've already determined that the Mag-US was fired twice before the sword was used at all. Firing such a weapon with a broken hand surely rendered his left useless. It is difficult to wield a sword with a damaged hand, isn't it, Sasuke? I mean, that's an irrelevant point here, Sarah. Historically, even the loss of a pinky on your non-dominant hand was considered enough to render you virtually defenseless. Is that why Yakuza would offer to cut off fingers as recompense for offences? That's right, Sarah. In fact, cut the chatter and save the history lesson. He had to pull the sword loose with one hand because his left was useless? Looking at the forensics pull from the katana, that's... Your Honour, the people claim that my client had to use one hand to retrieve his sword because his other hand was disabled. But does the evidence actually suggest that? Where is she going with this? What do you mean? Forensics performed on the katana found my client's right-hand fingerprints on the handle. But what grip? This is another thing I thought about. Surely if they know, like, left-hand from right-hand prints, they can tell when somebody is gripping a sword with the thumb up towards the pommel to yank it out, or thumb down towards the blade to wield. But what grip are the prints a match for? Let me just give it a quick think here as I meticulously analyse the position of each finger. A normal grip. The grip is normal. Do you mean to say that the thumb is facing towards the blade, Your Honour? Well, yeah, but isn't it just easier to say he held it like normal? If my client only held the sword with his right hand normally, Your Honour, that would mean he held the handle like that even as he tried to jostle the blade free from the floor it was impaled in. Which is far from impossible. But if, Your Honour, the court has questions about exactly how the defendant was positioned when he was found standing above Officer Chopin's corpse, I believe the people's next witness will be able to answer all of them. Am I making mistakes here, thinking Morgan's going to make points that she isn't? Stuff like, how can someone do a swift in-and-out stab on the neck one-handed at all, but, you know, always within acceptable range. But how can someone do that quick in-and-out stab, but not a quick in-and-out stab on the chest? Like, surely that feels like it should be addressed? That can only mean it's finally time to face off with the arresting officer. Chopin's partner. Very well. Then let us summon to the stand null name not found. What? What? Is that a family or given name? What? Yeah, I got one big ol' error right here and it's a classic. Witness not found, literally. He ain't here. What? He's had hours to get here. What the hell could he possibly be? A star witness is a no-show? Is this good news or bad news? Like hitting the jackpot in the world's sketchiest slot machine. Feels good, but you get the feeling that the staff is going to make you pay for it. That idiotic... Pay for it when? Fine, I'll finish it myself. Right about now. Perhaps it's for the best then, Your Honour. We can save the court the trouble by wrapping up things here and now. The facts are simple and the defence has failed to refute them. Thus the people call for summary judgment. Already? The defendant is the only one with his prints on the gun. He is the only one with his prints on the katana. His own employer testified to this court that he was attacked and captured by 4 of the 5 victims. He was found and arrested standing over the body of a dead cop, before 2 more officers arrested and secured the scene. That must be Reyes and London she's referring to. As the only living person at the scene of the crime, there can be no one else who could have committed these murders. She's on a tear, and I'd be lying if I said it wasn't entertaining. But it's only because she's on tilt. She was thrown off by a witness flaking and it's caused her to overstep. She just fired off a lot of claims in quick succession. Which is the weakest? Where do I counterattack? Alright. Murder weapons, pretty solid at this point. DNA evidence? It's going to be one of these two. But I don't know which. Like, I'm convinced he's not the only suspect, but I don't know if I have any proof for that. DNA evidence is going to be the prints, presumably, which is pretty locked in, even though I still think him having left-handed prints on the gun wouldn't work. I think it's this bit. He was found and arrested standing over the body of a dead cop. If he had the strength to like, no one's addressed why he'd still be there half an hour after murdering 4 people. Because, you know, all of their time of death is like 9:44, and then Chopin was killed literally half an hour later at 10:14. As the only living person at the scene of the crime, there's no one else who could have committed these murders. It's going to be one of these two, but I don't know which. They're very inspecifically named. I think it's got to be the only suspect because that's what she based her whole case around. So I've got to challenge that. She just claimed that Sasuke is the only one who could have committed these murders. She can't possibly prove that. She can't prove that there wasn't anyone else there that night because I actually was. And unlike her, I can prove the possibility of another party being present without having to reveal their identity. The people are mistaken, Your Honour. My client wasn't the only other person there that night. And there's evidence to show it. The dark card. The dark card. Okay, well the cloth, that could have been used to wipe prints. Yes. The cloth is... that could have been used by the criminals, the Blue Bloods. The red ink was used by the Blue Bloods. The broken bat could have been used by anybody. The dark card. Why would they have the dark card? Because it's known only to rich criminals. Oh, I don't know. It's either the cloth or the dark card. I think the cloth is a red herring. Because we've already established in this trial that it was probably used to wipe prints. Or to clean things, you know, so that's explained. But the dark card has gone completely unexplained, whereas everything else makes logical sense being there. Why would they be doing a transaction with the dark card that got cancelled? So I think it's that, and I'm going all in. What's that? The dark card found lodged into Creek's datapad? That's right, the perfect payment option when neither you nor the businesses you frequent like attaching names to faces. We've already discussed that within moments of Creek's death, a transaction was being attempted on his datapad. A transaction made using this dark card, but whatever for? Perhaps some of the handful of illicit substances that were found at the scene of the crime. Oh crap, yeah, almost forgot. These guys were drug dealers. And drug dealers get customers, Your Honor. Customers that can be very temperamental when things go south. Are you trying to suggest that these killings were the result of a drug deal gone wrong? I mean, they sort of were. A drug deal made in person at a blue blood stronghold? Dark cards require a passkey and a fingerprint. The card would be useless if its owner wasn't physically present for the transaction. A transaction that might be abruptly cancelled if tensions boiled over. A potential buyer would likely have been across the desk from Creek. The same spot in the room that we've established that the killer must have started their rampage. Cute idea, counsellor, but there's no meat to it. We know the Creek was using the datapad before he died. And we know the dark card was processing a transaction at the time. But for some reason you've made the assumption that he was selling, when the simplest explanation was he was buying, using the dark card that he owned. Yeah, that was the hole in the theory. The dark card belonged to Creek? How will you respond? I don't need to respond with evidence. Instead I respond with a song! No. I just need to point out the flawed evidence she's constructed her argument upon. Found on Creek's desk, Chopin's fingerprints. That's still so weird. Found stuck in datapad, wiped to prints. Leader of Blue Blood Pod, face ID'd. Let me have another look. Sorry, something's just occurred to me, because I've been reminded that Chopin's fingerprints were on the datapad. If he wasn't actually moved, and I still find it bizarre because, you know, there's the whole, he was dragged, like the drag marks in the blood. But if he was actually stood in front of the desk when he got stabbed, was he holding the datapad? Why? I don't understand why he would do what evidence says he did. Wiped of all prints. If Creek was using it, why would it be wiped to prints after Creek died? I think it's that. All in. Characterization, Your Honor. The people are claiming that the dark card and the evidence record belong to the victim Creek, despite the fact that it has no fingerprints on it either. What? Oh, successfully pick out the flaw in your opponent's reading the card explains the card. What? If that dark card had belonged to Creek, he would have had to insert it into the datapad with his teeth. Yuck. So who did the dark card belong to? Perhaps a customer who didn't like his prices. A disgruntled customer could have wiped their prints off the card to hide the fact they were ever there. That's absurd. If a customer brought that dark card with them to the crime scene, why the hell wouldn't they take it with them when they left? It was stuck in the datapad. They could have pulled a little harder. They could have taken the datapad with them. Who would leave behind something that valuable? The card is worthless to everyone but its owner, to whom it could be priceless. Why would they choose to leave it behind? The answer to that is simple. If I'm honest, we're discussing the possibility of a deal gone south. What could cause that in the first place? Aggressive negotiating tactics? Or a customer who couldn't pay? What are you... This customer could afford a dark card. And yet they couldn't pay. Hold on, you're trying to say that all these deaths, all this carnage, you think it's all because their card got declined? Hard to live down that kind of faux pas. Murdering 4 or 5 people in order to skip paying your bill is pretty aggressive, but if you need your fix... Was there any indication the contraband was taken from the scene of the crime? Your Honour, that is difficult to say. Without knowing their inventory before the crime occurred, we cannot rule out the possibility. That was a little lackluster of a pushback. Is she really that thrown off by the witness playing hooky? Well, I hate to do this, because I love spending time with you all and having a physical body and being ensouled. But it does seem like I have to declare a recess while we wait. Perfectly reasonable, Your Honour. That's the most romantic thing I've ever heard. What? Court is now in recess. Bloody hell. I think I did really well in that. Like, the only mistakes I made were really minor ones very early on. But like every time I really went for it, I did rather well, I think. I'm pleased with myself. I think I'm getting it a lot more. But my voice is aching, so I'm going to have to take a break. Thank you very much for watching. I'll be back with more soon, and I will catch you later.